Good morning, everybody. Happy Tuesday. I'm Rabbi Andrew, the Rabbinic Cynic. I'm a cynical rabbi. If you like this vlogcast, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. You can visit my YouTube channel. I usually post it at the end of so this is a live broadcast, but it doesn't necessarily have to be watched live. I just do it here at 8:30 because my brain just works better after I've had my 2 cups of coffee first thing in the morning and gone for my walk and worked out. Just got that all going. Today we're going to be talking about this idea of the selfie culture. I've talked about this before, and funnily enough, I'm going to relate it to the episode of She-Hulk that aired last Thursday, She-Hulk Attorney at Law. And so you might be wondering, how does this have to do with Judaism and this morality and what are the issues with the selfie culture that we have? And it's a very serious issue. This kind of disconnect that has happened in society. I read a really interesting article by Rabbi Jonathan Sachs that was published in the Daily Telegraph. It was an opinion piece that he wrote back in 2018. And he begins the article by describing, asks the question, what happens to a national identity when everything holding a nation together disintegrates or disappears? Right, that's a good question. What happens to society when the focus of a culture is on the self and its icon, the selfie, right? We all take selfies. Sometimes we take food selfies, sometimes we take regular selfies. And so what happens when Google filters and Facebook friends divide us into non-commuting sects of the like-minded, right? I know people, we decided not to be friends with somebody. Oh, I don't like what their politics are. So that's it. They're not worth even being friends with. They don't even kind of delve into why they don't like them anyway. They've just decided, that what they say on Facebook somehow relates to who they are as a person. But when this happens, so Rabbi Sachs asks another question, what happens to morality when the mantra is no longer, we're all in this together, but rather, I'm free to be myself. What does that mean? I'm free to be myself. So it's this idea of, absolute narcissism. And I think that there's this encouragement for narcissism in the 21st century, in this culture that we live in. My sister-in-law published posted on our little family group chat, this real funny video of a millennial and a Gen Xer. And the millennial had just kind of, and it's really funny, and he takes out what we remember as remember the disposable cameras? And he thought it was, well, what's this? This is like a Pop-Tart. And he rips it open, and he's like, how does this work? Well, you take the picture, and you don't even know what the picture that you're taking. This is a kind of a, and it's a very funny meme. It's a very funny little Instagram post. At the end of the day, the Gen X just kind of shakes rolls his eyes and opens a beer and walks off, which is typical of us Gen Xers. But on a more serious note, what's happened in Western culture is that we live since we live in such a society of the selfie. We have to understand that morality matters more than we commonly acknowledge, right? We've taken the I and it becomes more important than the we. That's what I mean by morality. I don't mean, the Judeo-Christian views of morality necessarily. I think the idea of morality in terms of what we think makes a better society, right? That we need to take that selfishness of society, right? And that was right. I'm not going to say right again. We need to take that element of selfishness in society that it showed itself very well, I think, at the beginning of the pandemic, right? People just trampling over each other to hoard toilet paper, right? That's the eye of selfishness, right? That people have become so selfish that they just don't even care. They're going to roll over each other at Costco to take toilet paper. Why toilet paper? I do not know. There are many different ways of wiping your tuchus. It just seems that it turned they thought toilet paper was the same. But it was all, everybody was in it for themselves. There was no, and then the world became even more divided. Jonathan Sacks wrote this, Rabbi Lord Sacks wrote this article back in 2018, but it really was foreshadowing of the world that we're living in today. And so the real question is, how do we take the disconnect that we see in society and turn it into a we, right? The alchemy that turns selfish genes into selfless people, egoists into altruists, and self-interests striving into empathy and sympathy and compassion for others. There was an interesting study that was done back in Britain, that they discovered that a quarter of 14-year-old girls in the UK had self-harmed in the course of a year. And this had turned into a real disturbing trend. And they then discovered a similar study of American children born after 1995, right? The first generation to grow up with smartphones. And this author in this radio series explained that there was this great dissatisfaction with teenagers back in after 2012. Depression, suicide, it rocketed up. And women were becoming far more vulnerable. Girls were becoming far more vulnerable. And part of this was attributed to this idea of FOMO, right? Fear of missing out. Fear of missing out. And constantly comparing yourself to these burnished images, quoting Jonathan Sacks again, of their contemporary Jenners, she says, are scared, maybe even terrified. They are both the physically safest generation and the most mentally fragile. What does that mean? Physically safest, because no one goes anywhere. But most mentally fragile is that their self-view of who they are is based on how they view themselves, of how they view their bodies, of how that's expressed on social media. That people look on social media, these young girls, young men, look on social media and they see all these beautiful people. And it becomes this kind of competition that who can make that pose the best, that kind of pose. You seen that pose? It goes even further than that. That society has then come into this world of political correctness, right? Safe spaces, trigger warnings, no platforming despite good intentions, can screen out from university life views and voices that don't fit those prevailing canons of political correctness, right? Has to be done in the right, not to be offended, right? Right. I've made my New Year's resolution for the Jewish holidays to stop saying the word right. But if you think about it, this is almost an Orwellian view of society that cancel culture has taken whatever you say and it's become exploded to the point, magnified to the point where it's just you feel uncomfortable saying anything. Now, that doesn't mean that you can just say whatever you want, no matter who it hurts. But at the same time, people are frightened of becoming more isolated. And this is where you see younger generations becoming more and more isolated, more and more put into these boxes where they don't feel that they necessarily fit in. And it's a very dangerous trend. It's a very dangerous trend for younger generations, even older generations. That we see in society, the selfie society, where we're looking so much inwards that we're not learning how to look outwards. We're seeing all these books that are coming out, how democracies died, the suicide of the West, the retreat of Western liberalism. And all this has done is left us with this world of instability. We're seeing it, the rise of certain extremist nationalist elements throughout the world has made it even more difficult. That it's my freedom. You are infringing on my freedom because you won't do X, Y, and Z. No matter which way you want to look at it, right? The left has their own version, and the right has their own version. And the middle has their own version, but at the same time, everyone just seems to be isolated, more and more isolated. And I know I wanted to draw that connection to the She-Hulk episode that we saw on last Thursday. I just watched it last night, And it was all about how she was being sued for the use of her name, She-Hulk. And that in itself is, that's understandable, right? Someone jumps aboard and starts to, they see a name that becomes popular, quickly trademark it, and it becomes, and so the person that originally came up with it may not necessarily have control of that anymore. And that was the premise there. The She-Hulk was like, that's a bullshit name. I don't want to use that name. My name's Jen. But at the same time, when some weird, celebrity type person took on her name, she felt that was infringing upon her right to use her name, and it ended up affecting her job. I wrote this at the beginning of the survey. Spoiler alert. It affected her at the beginning of her her job. They were saying, well, we were hired for you to be She-Hulk and represent superheroes. So now that She-Hulk has become, we're being sued, you need to fix that. So what was interesting, though, was the solution that she came up with to fix it was that she was trying to date in a previous episode under her real self. And she's cute, but doesn't have that, over that selfie-looking, Kim Kardashian view. But she's a normal, attractive, professional woman. And she's trying to date as herself. But so she says, I'm going to date as She-Hulk. So she took these selfies and she gained the most. All the dates she went on became so superficial in this sense that it just showed no one really wanted to know who she really was. They were just looking at that superficiality. That was done in a very tongue-in-cheek way, but it really made that same statement about the difference between the I and the me in society and how everything's looked at on that superficial level, the swipe right idea. And it wasn't until she came out as a superhero and a superstar and kind of pulled that personality that she started getting dates, but they were the wrong dates. So when they saw who she really was, they just kind of they didn't really like the real person. And so I think what we're coming to is into a world where it's difficult to show who you really are because you're not sure if that's going to fit in with what people are seeing on social media and the press and on whatever it is they're watching, whatever it is we are being exposed to. And so we have to find a way to challenge that by taking our own egos out of it and turning it into altruism. I think the only real way to do that is to reach out to people that you feel uncomfortable with. I think that's the purpose of this podcast, was to reach out to people you feel uncomfortable with and to have conversations with them instead of judging people by what they post on social media. I know a lot of people just don't even go on social media for that very reason. And I think you can have much more productive lives without social media. At the same time, I'm on social media here talking, so who am I to talk? I'm trying to boost my YouTube channel, but I'm doing it for reasons of I want to educate. I'm doing it for my own personal reasons. I might have shared with you earlier some of the challenges that I'm going through. It's almost like a diary at the same time as also trying to teach some Judaism. But I'm also trying to understand myself, the world that I live in, and how I can make this a better world. This is my own personal journey. Right? We need to look into a world. What does it mean to be decent? What does it mean to be honest, to be faithful, to learn self-restraint? That the basic tenet of Judaism is do unto others as you'll have done unto yourself. That we should live in a world of the we, not the I. I had someone I know say to me the other day, a while back, we just had these new little composting things dropped off for our garden. For our, you compost the waste that you make when you're cooking. Instead of just throwing it in the garbage, make it into compost, recycles. It goes into the green. And what happens is the waste disposal company uses it to make fertilizer so that we can grow things. Right? That's I think a really great idea. And so one of this person who's a really nice person came and said, I don't do this kind of thing because I spent my whole life giving for other people. So I don't really need to, I don't really need to give to people anymore. I don't need to help the world anymore because I've already done enough. Well, no, we haven't done enough. As long as we have a breath in our bodies, we haven't done enough, right? The world of we rather than the world of I. We need to take that out of the picture. I'm going to end with this paragraph that Rabbi Sachs quotes at the end of his article. And and I think it's very powerful. And he quotes Viktor Frankl, who was a Holocaust survivor. And Viktor Frankl was also a founder, a great founder of modern psychology, a branch of modern psychology that was revolutionary. And as a Holocaust survivor, he learned one thing, that the people that survived, and other than the people, obviously there were people that had this attitude but that died as well, but most of the people that survived shared one trait in common, is that they had a purpose. They found what their why was. They looked at what their purpose was to serve a greater goal, help other people, and that's what helped them survive such a terrible thing as the Holocaust. And so this is what Rabbi Sacks says: while the market and the state are about competition, morality is about cooperation. It is born and sustained in families, communities, voluntary organizations, and religious congregations. Altruism, Viktor Frankl taught us, is the best cure for depression. Virtue, as Aristotle noted, is the basis of strong societies, and each of us can make a contribution. As Melinda Gates reminded us in the last programming of the series, change one life for the better, and you've begun to change the world. And that's very similar to a statement in the Talmud that says, one who saves a life, ki'ilu, it is as if you have saved an entire world. One who has taken a life, as if you have destroyed an entire world. And Rabbi Sacks ends with this powerful paragraph. It's just two sentences. Morality is the redemption of our solitude. With it, we can face the future without fear, knowing that we are not alone. Knowing that we are not alone. And that is in this world of social media, where we can have so many thousands of Facebook friends and followers on Twitter, but at the same time, we can be existentially alone. The cure to not being alone is what Viktor Frankl says. Right? The cure for that depression, the cure for that loneliness, is to learn how to make a contribution. Is to learn how to find our purpose. I think that's the most powerful thing that we can understand for the high holidays. There's a thing that we say. There's a phrase that we say on the high holidays. How are you able to overturn the bad decree that we may have for the following year? Which really means, how do we change the course of our lives that may not seem that great right now? And it's for two things. It's through tefillah, tshuva, and tzedakah. Not necessarily that order. That the first one is prayer, trying to understand what it is that you need and what the world needs. The first is reconciling with yourself to make a difference, to change. And the third is tzedakah, which doesn't necessarily just mean giving money, but giving over your strengths, the treasures of what you can contribute to society. That is your path forward for change for the coming year. And so with that, I'm going to sound the shofar, the kol demama daka, the still silent voice. And in the silence, we find the scream of prayer, the sound of prayer, the song of prayer, the song of ourselves. Everybody have a happy Tuesday. Be good to each other. And I wish you long life, live long, and prosper. Bye.